And welcome to the Augur 8 Knot meeting for today, April 28th, 2025, as it turns out. So yeah, this is the issue that I opened, and it's this
Yeah, the worker timeout, that's new. And I'm running into that as well. The error that I was curious to see that there's one that's like on startup that um I've seen before, but I haven't seen that this portion of the errors is not I'm not seeing that on my
yeah,
side.
yeah. So I don't like it's hard for me to like something weird like this has happened before, and I just like blew away a bunch of local stuff. Actually, I think at that point when I fixed it the last time, I just opened up a whole new EC2 instance. Um, but I don't know why that would work. And so I added down here that I think I think it smells like a local authentication issue just because the database receives some kind of fast shut. I don't know, something's going wrong with the database, obviously, that you're using for caching, but I don't know what it is.
Yeah, let me while we're on the topic, I'm in the our production one, sudo docker ps. Let's see, what are we using for our Postgres cache? I guess I don't know how to check what version. Because yeah, it's showing on our EC2, like so the hosted instance of 8 knot, which is at this point seems to be the only instance of 8 knot that's actually working, and I don't really know why. But it seems like
Yeah,
the solution to this problem might be found in that differentiation.
yeah. I mean,
Um,
my guess is I don't know how often you do a Docker system prune-AF on that system, but my guess is that if you did that and rebuilt it, it would have the same problems the rest of us are seeing. I mean, I don't know that, and
yeah.
maybe it's not something to go tempt right now, but
Oh no, I will not be touching that. I will be talking to Greg.
yeah, yeah.
But at least this is very helpful. It probably saved me at least a couple of hours.
Well,
Uh,
if my guess is right, it'll save you a lot of time. If my guess is not right, then you're probably
um,
gonna be down the rabbit hole anyway.
a couple of hours of figuring out that it's not just our data, like, because I mean,
Yeah,
up until this point has been, is this a database problem or is this an 8 knot problem? And so to be able to go down to being like, this is an 8 knot problem, that alone saves me a lot of time. Because then
yeah,
I could just start looking at yeah, because we're having like all sorts of database problems that have nothing, that are not having to do with Augur, because we had to rebuild our replica and things are acting strange. But that's not here nor there for this specific call.
yeah. I mean, certainly the scalability that comes with the replica. I mean, if there are challenges that you encounter that you can write down,
Oh
others
yeah,
appreciate it.
they're not Augur specific. They are like hosting. This is like a replica. We hit a tale of oldest time problem of trying to do a backup of the database. Disk filled up, caused a lot of problems, and almost blew away both of our databases. But we don't need to go into all that.
Oh, wow, that sounds exciting.
It was really fun. But yeah, this all started the day before my surgery. So you could see how, and then I got back, and then Greg was out for a week. And you could see how that could cause a cascading of issues in the situation.
For sure, for sure.
Sweet. Well,
So,
I don't know what's on the agenda of what
yeah,
there is.
the only other thing that I have on the agenda is just I know that Kelly, you had some issues that were at the top of the list. I don't know if John has other questions or issues at the top of his list, John Strunk, but I thought now would be a good time to ask about that.
I guess for me on my side of it, I've logged those issues. Luckily, up until this point, we haven't had those issues to the same like volume that made our disk fill up, so that's good. But they're not fixed. I guess they're still there. And
Yeah,
we're still
yeah.
having the I would say the key one where we're hitting the rate limit is probably the most concerning one, just because you don't want to get our keys null and voided from
Right.
hitting the out of bounds. So that one we are seeing again. Let me see if there's actually any of those within the last little bit for that I can actually get a good view. I can check on the
In Surface
uh,
contributors, usually it gets there within an hour or so of being restarted.
yep, we're in that range. So let me answer your question that you had in chat about that as well. I'm gonna check on the keys right now. John, I didn't know if John had anything. I haven't, I think we're all
Yeah,
meeting a little bit later today to kind of see what's going on that side of the house.
yeah, and John Strunk, yeah.
Yeah, I mean we can talk more in depth later, but I guess the thing I'm working on right now is I'm kind of trying to dig into the Python dependencies and the kind of the install process. Um, particularly as as the containers are built and stuff like that. I know there was some discussion around the multiple calls to pip install packages and inconsistencies and things there. And like one thing I noticed was that it seems like depending upon the order in which the various uh, I guess subparts of Augur, depending upon the order that you install them, you end up with a different set of dependencies that get installed. Um, it seems
Interesting.
like the versions specified in all the setup py files are consistent, but the lower level dependencies that get pulled in um,
So like
seem to be calculated.
the dependencies of the dependencies that are um
Yes.
yeah, things that get installed because I installed something specifically. Those can be inconsistent, it sounds like.
Yes.
Interesting.
Um, and so what I'm actually looking at right now is the possibility to move over to something like, well, specifically to UV for managing the dependencies, because that will go and like, so it builds a lock file that contains all of the dependencies, not just the direct dependencies of the project,
Because it's
and
called
will,
UV.
yeah.
Kaio actually just moved us over to that on 8 knot.
And what's taking me a little while is I'm not particularly well versed in the setup pi type stuff, and how setup tools and things
Work, yeah.
works. So and particularly because we've got I don't know what you want to call them, the sub packages that have their own setup pi files, and trying to kind of preserve how that works. And I'll admit I still don't have kind of my head wrapped around the structure of the Augur code base, and kind of why those are sub packages already.
Why there's multiple setup.pys, you mean?
Yes.
Yeah, so the design idea is that each of the things that are data collection tasks could be pulled out and ultimately installed independently or separately. That's the goal, but that has never been implemented. So um, the setup.pys under the Augur tasks directory are the ones that get executed in addition to the main setup.py. And and so, it's conceivable that we could either factor those into separate packages, which is the original design intent, or make sure that we're using something that installs all of the things consistently until we do that.
Right. Yeah, so there is this like workspace notion in UV that
Is it
seems
just,
like it will kind of follow that pattern that you've got right now with those individual packages under there. Um, yeah, that's it.
yeah, I've never actually heard of this, which doesn't mean anything other than I'm behind the cool factor on my Python knowledge.
Yeah, so I guess the big thing there is that you have to move to the pyproject.toml
Uh,
format for declaring your project.
I see.
Um,
That's why
and
Callie was
then
asking about that the other day.
okay.
Probably. Or maybe it was you, John, that asked about the PyProject.toml.
It might have been.
Yeah.
Definitely was
I also have
John,
a,
not me.
Yeah. Sorry.
I was gonna say I have a little experience with the Pi project type stuff. I've contributed to some other projects that use like poetry, which also uses that same tonal format. So I might be able to help if there's issues, just post them in the Slack.
All right. Yeah. I guess the big thing is like how the project metadata is declared and stuff like that.
Hmm.
I guess we don't push Augur to like PyPy or anything.
No,
So
we don't. We don't. And I think for Augur to be sort of moved into that space, we would have to have an implementation. We'd have to figure out how we're going to deal with the fact that the core of Augur requires the database. um, which I don't have like a quick, easy solution to, although I'm sure that this has happened before in the world.
yeah, no, that's fair.
I don't know how to do
And
it.
I guess since we're not trying to push it to a package repository like that, the metadata, I guess, sort of matters less.
Hmm.
Um, but
No,
anyway,
I
that's
mean, I
kind of
think,
what I'm looking at right now.
all right, that's awesome. I mean, that certainly is work that needs to be done and would be helpful. Um, this UV thing's pretty cool. Um,
It is so fast.
yeah, John has his hand up.
Yeah, so I can maybe contribute a little bit of context to the sort of pip installability of the different modules. Um, Augur for a really long time had a pretty big problem with circular dependencies. So it would often be the case where working on almost any part of Augur would take an extremely long time because it would be almost impossible to figure out how to avoid circular dependencies on startup, where you have one module that tries to import something from another module that is actively importing that module, right? And so part of the work that we did in addressing that was to sort of try to modularize the different components in sort of logical style. Um, Now I don't think that Andrew or Isaac or anyone else on the current team were the ones who set up the different setup.pies, but we sort of saw that as one possibility to sort of silo the different components of Augur to make it so that circular dependencies were, if not impossible, at least a lot more difficult to create inside of Augur accidentally.
That makes logical sense to me, John. Yeah, I think that's right. I think the other piece of information to keep in mind is, if this tool called UV is a way to sort of ensure that the dependencies of our dependencies get installed at a consistent version, which sounds like it's possibly an issue, then all that would require, I believe, is a slight modification of our install scripts and our compile scripts. Like it wouldn't be, I don't believe it would be a huge undertaking to change how Augur is built.
No, it wouldn't. It's the work is really just in, kind of converting the setup Pi flow over to, the Pi project toml. And then I think it's actually going to simplify a lot of the setup because, UV handles the virtual environment for you. So, like if you look at the docs today, right, it talks about creating, your virtual environment and, activating it and all that other stuff. Whereas
Yeah.
UV handles all that for you.
Yeah, that's a UV is a great tool then, because honestly, I think that is one of the biggest obstacles to somebody just picking up Python and playing with it, is sorting out this whole virtual environment concept, right? So if you can take that away from anyone just learning Python and make it simpler, I think it makes learning Python a lot easier, honestly. Having taught hundreds of newbie Python developers over the years, this creation of the virtual environment is a constant stumbling block at the beginning. So yeah, John, if you want any, you know, you want us to try anything or experiment, or if you got questions, just reach out and ask, because I think it sounds to me like what this is something that will make the installation of Augur work even more consistently. Because if I'm hearing correctly, this is also an issue in the deployment of Docker containers of Augur, right?
Yeah, yeah, it is. Because yeah, I ran across this dependency thing originally whenever I was looking at the Docker file, because the way it's set up right now, we create the virtual environment, and then we call the pip binary that is installed in the virtual environment, but we don't ever activate the virtual environment before doing the pip install.
Well, that's interesting.
And I found that if I change the Docker file to activate the virtual environment and then call pip, it I haven't dug into exactly what is different about the end result,
Yeah.
but there is a good 5-minute difference in build time on my laptop. So it is clearly doing something else.
So it's a longer
And
build time, I assume.
yes, it's longer.
I mean,
And so, that I find that very worrying, right? So,
yeah. I mean, my working knowledge of Python would be that if you're not in, of course, I think everyone knows this that's on this call, but if you're not in a virtual environment, it's installing the packages globally for all Python stuff that's running in that, in this case, container, which is fine for that container. Um, so my guess would be that there is some separate caching process that has to occur in a virtual environment that doesn't have to occur when you're just installing a package into the global Python universe on a piece of fake metal, which
yeah.
is all Docker or Podman is. But that's a very conceptual, possible explanation that doesn't really solve the problem. Callie, are there, or anyone, Kaio or John, are there any other issues besides the one that Callie pointed out earlier?
I just want to promote the one about trying to figure out the mapping between a GitHub, say GitHub repository, A changes its name to B, and it was collected on Augur under A. How do you figure out from link B that it goes back to A?
Is that the
So
what I have up right now?
if you're not sharing your screen, so I don't know.
I think I'm sharing my screen. Does nobody see my screen?
No.
I can see your screen.
Oh,
Let me try resharing. It could just be some local foo.
there we go. let's see. I'm Yes, I thought that I added more let me maybe
I mean,
reload it.
yeah, it could be that like, and I've done this before, maybe there's a separate issue and this one got opened in addition to it.
Oh, this is actually a different this is a different issue than what I was referring to.
This one
Um
here, probably then, this 2 week one.
yes. Um the more recent one is important, but not I mean it's good. It's like I want it to get worked on, but it's not this is a lot more important.
Okay,
Um in the sense of yeah, like trying to see how with the current if a repository gets loaded on in under an old URL, how do you find that from the new URL?
right.
And if that information is tracked anywhere. Like I know whenever we collect on it, it's able to realize it, but trying to go the opposite direction, I don't know.
So I know that we have, John, you may have a deeper up-to-date understanding. So I think the question is, I put in an old URL for a repo that's already moved.
Mhm.
Is that right?
No,
No, okay.
I'm saying that say 6 months ago, like let's just use this exact 6 months ago, say I loaded in Red Hat developer code ready workspaces. Today I'm asked to analyze Red Hat developer dev spaces. This is the same repository. The name has just changed in that 6 month time. If I search for Red Hat developer dev spaces, nothing comes up. But then if I try to collect on that, it doesn't collect anything new because it's actually already in there. It's just under a different name. And so, how do I find Red Hat developer code ready workspaces whenever I have Red Hat developer dev spaces? Because if you even click that link, the code ready workspaces, it's going to send you to dev spaces
Right.
because
The automatic redirect. Yeah.
yes. And
Which,
so how to find that information so then we can integrate it. Well, I mean, then it makes my process a lot easier to analyze stuff,
so,
but to be integrated into the search bar.
so John, when I'm, my understanding is that we do, so for example, if we put in this old one, when Augur is going through and collecting, it's going to update the Git URL that the redirect goes to. Is that your,
Yes.
yeah,
So the way that Augur currently does it is if a repo was collected on and then it moved, Augur updates the URL in the database to point to the 301 target. So the redirect that GitHub sends us on the API side gets switched over in the database. And for collection, that's important because actually not all API endpoints get redirected. So some of them will just be 404s. So we have to do that collection
Okay, so
side.
I'll say that from in actuality, at least in our instance, the repo Git is not getting updated. I went
Okay.
through up to 1,000. I've hit I would say probably at least 30 to 40 cases of it. I have tasked with analyzing a whole lot of repos in the last couple weeks. And so I hit this probably at least 20 times. So yeah, I'll just say that it's not the I don't know where in the process it would be changing, but I hit this a decent amount.
Okay. It's supposed to be.
Yeah.
And we did run tests, and in our testing before deploying the change, it did work for us. So I'm not sure exactly why it's not working for you, but we do currently have the ability in Augur to detect a repo move via 301 and to initiate an update of the URL in the database so that the new URL is stored. What we don't do is store the fact that the move happened because the URL is updated everywhere. And so there's no way to associate the old location with the new location.
So yeah, I guess we'll figure out, I guess, trying to figure out if there's any instances on the database that y'all can see. It might be worth looking into like that link that I gave as an example might also exist in the database that y'all manage.
Yeah.
Because because I'd say in a very consistent way, anything that has moved, the link is not getting updated. I think Triton is a good example as well. You can look at Triton. Triton Lang has moved over in the last couple of months. Um,
So the only instance, as far as I understand, I wasn't the one who directly worked on the repo move logic that we use for detecting and resolving 301s. But to my understanding, the only case in which the repo would not be updated is if we already have 2 copies of that repo in the database. Also,
Yeah, that's what I've seen.
apologies for the background if you can hear the mowing lawn outside.
You can't. It's pretty amazing, the sound canceling
Oh
feature.
yeah, I guess Zoom finally instituted some sort of noise
Pretty
cancellation.
pretty awesome sound canceling, or noise canceling.
Yeah.
Um,
But yeah, so to my understanding, the only way in which the repo move logic will fail, and it should log this as an exception on the in the logging, is if someone somehow entered the new repo URL into the database before the repo move was recognized. And
okay.
so previously we actually didn't do any repo move logic, and so it was quite easy to accidentally collect 2 copies of the same repo. But then when we instituted it, it started to make attempts to move repos, and then any repos that had already happened to have been collected on twice under 2 different URLs, or sometimes 3 different URLs, um, then it would create problems with trying to update the old repos since the new one already
yeah, and
exists.
I do have so Kelly, is the credentials I have for your database, are they still correct? And
Yeah,
yeah, so
you
um,
can look at it. Um,
there is a script in Augur Utilities that will identify, basically it goes through, it identifies any repository that already has the repo source ID or is missing its repo source ID, which is GitHub's canonical identifier for each repository that is immutable to changes in the URL. And it goes and gets it, and it'll generate an error, this script, and tell me which repositories have another URL that redirects to the same place and the same repo source ID. So I think I
in
could
the Are you
modify.
saying in the repository?
Yeah, in the repo table. So there's a
So we're not having any duplicate problems. There is only one link. There's only one. The repository is only loaded in once, and all the situations that I've looked into.
can you check and see if all of the I'm sorry, all the repo source IDs are not null, are no, none of them should be null. And if
I
any of them
can check this one.
are,
I don't have a way to systematically check all of them.
basically
This
it's
is
this column in the repo source ID, just that's it, repo source ID.
okay. I can look at it now.
That would be the query I just put in chat would be how I would get it from Augur data. So basically I would I would run a modified version of this because this actually tries to populate the repo source IDs, which obviously my users read only.
So it has a repo source idea for that example that I have listed in the issue. It does have a repo source ID.
So the question would be, are there any records without one?
I don't really have a way to I mean, are you saying of anything in the like overall or the one that fit this specific use case?
Right. So because your database is older, the repo source ID is something that was populated after your database was created. And I put this in the chat, a query to identify how many, if any, repos have a null repo source ID. So the fact that you have one with a repo source ID for the right repo, it could still be the case that there is another record in the repo table that doesn't have a repo source ID that is redirecting to an older version of that Git URL.
So that is what I search for is the old Git URL.
Right. And so
So you're saying that there's two versions of that Git URL?
well, I'm saying the way to find that out is to first see if you have any records that have a repo source ID that's null.
Yeah, we have a lot of those.
Okay, so then the thing that a modified version of this script would do, basically I would just take the update out of it, is create a list of all of the URLs that are failing, where we cannot populate the repo source ID because it already exists.
I guess I'm confused of why, if that was in there twice, wouldn't it already, like, wouldn't I be able to see that already from the queries that I'm
So
doing, just looking for the URL?
I suppose if you're looking for the URL that it used to be, as well as the URL that it is now,
Yes.
in all likelihood, that would get you there. If there was a situation where there was an intermediate third URL that got populated without a repo source ID, so if there's any other URL that's redirecting to this same repo, which this script would give you a list of all of the ones with repo source IDs that are null, and we could tell you which ones are duplicate, basically, because they would fail.
Okay.
So this is the update script that we talked about running on your instance before, I think last month.
Is this part of the delete script?
Yep, this is the delete script. In fact, what gets generated from running this is a delete script. So
Okay.
the first thing this does is it tries to, if you can run it with an Augur user that has write privileges, then you could just run this as is, and it would populate the repo source ID where it's null, and there is no other repo that's like in conflict that would resolve to the same URL. Then for the ones that do resolve to the same URL, it picks a tiebreaker and it gets rid of one, saves the other. So the delete script that's generated from this is then run on the Augur instance to clean up all of the stuff, all of the duplicate repos that may exist on an older Augur instance like yours.
Yeah, I'm trying to even see how many we have that are, let's see.
I will say that if you have like a lot of missing repo source IDs, then the question might be trying to figure out why that's happening, because you shouldn't have
Well,
too many null repo
We
source
know. I
IDs.
guess ours is because of the historical.
this is because we started this repo in 2021, John. This Augur database. So it's just that.
Okay, that makes sense then.
Yeah.
I guess I don't realize how often GitHub repos move.
More often than I realized.
Yeah, it does. It moves. Things move a lot more often than you would think. Okay. I do think there's something more going on here, but I will wait until we can run the delete script before I can know that for sure.
Yeah.
I would recommend looking at I think Triton is a really good example that I know is in your database of seeing if Triton has the updated URL in your instance. Because if it doesn't, then that paints a lets us know that it's something that's happening in both places.
This is is it just Triton?
I can give you the let me find the old URL and what the new one is.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure.
Because I can check that. I've run this cleanup script on our instance, though there are 4 that I didn't catch the first time for different reasons.
Triton Lang, this is the one that it is now. And so if it comes up under this, it means that it got updated. It was under OpenAI.
Sorry, I'm trying to open it. All right. So this is the old one
This is the new one.
this is the new
So
one.
yeah, so if nothing comes up, then
And what's the old one? Or you don't know?
it's just OpenAI, and instead of Triton Lang, I'll send it in just a second.
That's just OpenAI Triton.
And yeah, I'm putting it in right now.
Yep, that did it. Took us to the same
Yeah.
repo. So they just moved it from the OpenAI to the Triton.
Yeah, they made a Triton org.
All right. Yeah, I can check that on our Augur instance and see. I expect if it was duplicated, it was probably cleaned up when I did the cleanup, but I'll find out.
Yeah, that's not like what I'm looking for is if it's duplicated. I'm looking to see if it updated even without it being duplicated, if it updated the URL, because even without duplicates on ours for certain ones, it's not updating.
Yeah. This repo doesn't look particularly old or exceptionally large.
No, it's not. It's a pretty.
3,800
It's probably
commit.
within about a year.
Yeah.
And so, but it had. I know I had added it into Padres like right before the migration.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I'll look into this one after the call.
Sounds good. Yeah, the rape limiting stuff is definitely the most important. I'm going to open up some more issues because I'm actually already seeing some other. It seems like there might be some other things that are hitting rate limiting. That we're getting errors for rate limit stuff.
I mean, it's what's interesting about that is we are checking rate limits and like pulling back.
Yeah.
And yes, I'm not having issues with rate limiting errors on my instance. So that one's a little bit weird and I'll look into it.
I can maybe provide a little insight on that.
Okay.
I was looking at the error and it looks like that rate limit exception is maybe coming from facade.
It is.
And the reason why that is a little bit of maybe the cause is because facade actually does not use the key orchestrator. So it does not have the built-in ability to sort of back off on key usage. I was under the impression that facade maybe didn't even use API requests, but apparently it does.
I think where
somewhere.
it does is in exactly where the error is occurring in the resolution of individual emails to GitHub users.
Okay.
So there's an interface that gets implemented in Facade, and update Facade contributors is called from within this Facade work chain, but it does rely on the rest of Augur's API key resolution, what I think might be the case is there may be a refactored method that it hasn't been implemented for that.
Okay.
Perhaps it got missed in the imports, and I can show you where that is, John.
Yeah, that'd be great. I think I found it in facade GitHub core.py, but I'm not sure if that's
That sounds right. Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sounds right. Because
Um,
it calls a class that's implemented as an interface.
yeah, I can see that it is importing GitHub data access in this file, which I was under the assumption that facade only used GitHub keys for authentication to like clone repos, but
Right.
it apparently is not the case. So I can probably talk with Isaac just to make sure that I'm doing the right changes, but I might actually be able to patch this to use the key manager
Yeah,
myself.
that'd be good if you could get a patch working on that, because I suspect that that's possibly all that's required.
Yeah. So I'll have that ready. If I can't reach out to Isaac, I'll just go ahead and um push a patch up for review before tomorrow's meeting.
All right. Sounds awesome. Thanks, John. And we're just about out of time, so thanks, everybody. It's for a good discussion,
Thanks, everybody.
and we'll talk to you in a couple weeks.
See ya.
Yeah,
Thank you.
bye.